welcome back to Everything in Between. I got Damien here with me. He just joined the support group, and we're going to hear his story. So, Damien, the earliest memories you got?
Yeah, hey, thank you for having me here. Um, it's been awesome to be able to share similar stories or experiences that other people that have this kind of anxiety, and I'm speaking of agoraphobia. Um, it's quite a ride. Um, yeah, so I guess I can begin with I guess the most recent issues. About a year ago, I was working at a company out here in Los Angeles, and it's a tech company. So I'm always at a desk. I'm always surrounded by employees. Um, I have to drive there, obviously, and did a lot of things by myself. Like any other person in the field would do, and no problems with anxiety. Um, Took about, I don't know, 30 minutes to drive there from my home, 30 minutes back. Well, actually more, driving back because of traffic. And I never had any anxiety issues. Very casual nervousness whenever we would have a meeting in the office, but nothing out of the ordinary. So here comes COVID, and the HR team's telling us we're gonna have you all work from home for 2 weeks, and just to be safe. And so I was happy. I was excited. Um, I was dealing with a lot of BS there in the company, a lot of narcissists were there, narcissism, should I say? So I didn't really like working there as much, but I figured it would be a nice break to be able to finally work from home, for a long period of time, or at least 2 weeks.
Right.
Yeah, and it was great. The first 2 weeks were fantastic. First month was okay. I didn't realize a year went by when it did. Um, and then I want to say the second year into the pandemic, um, I had to go drive my car to get it smog checked to register for or to reapply to uh, what do you call that? When I had to get the license plate stickers again, re-register. Yeah, I don't know. Registration was due, and I had to get a smog check. So I'm driving to the smog check place where I normally go to every year or every other year, and the place was shut down. And I was like, oh, this is odd. This place is normally booming with business. So I'm like, all right, I know one other place. I'll just drive over there. And as I'm driving over there, uh, I'm noticing, this is odd. I'm feeling a little anxious, but I didn't know that was the word because I never felt this way before. I felt something in my chest, kind of like an adrenaline surge. And it was kind of scaring me a little bit because I knew it wasn't a heart attack. But I didn't know what it was. And I was on edge. I was very edgy driving. And I'm like, oh, this is weird. I'm not feeling good. But I'm so close. I'm so close to the destination. But it was about, a couple blocks away. And I called up my girlfriend, on the phone. And I said, hey, I don't know what's happening, but like I'm breathing heavily. And I know that the station is just, a couple blocks away, but I'm not feeling good here. I don't know what's going on. Maybe I should go home. What do you think? And she's like, well, how close are you to the place? I'm like, it's literally just 2 blocks away, but like I'm breathing heavily. Like I have this weird feeling in my chest, and I don't know what's going on. I'm feeling anxious. What should I do? What should I do? And I start panicking basically. And I said, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going home because this is getting weird. I don't know what's going on. And the first thought in my mind was that the closest thing that ever happened to me that my heart started racing was in high school. During orientation, is when I actually passed out. I actually fainted. I think because I had a lot of, I guess I was anxious a little bit, but I figured, oh no, I'm going to faint again for some reason, which makes no sense to me. So I thought, all right, let me drive home. But I had to pull over. The anxiety attack was happening, And I just didn't know what the hell it was about or what to do, but I knew that I couldn't focus on anything else. So I pulled over and I was talking to my girlfriend, telling her, I don't know what's happening to me. My mind's racing. I'm feeling scared of something. I didn't, I don't have any pain anywhere. So it's not a heart attack, but I don't know what's going on. Um, so then she says, well, just come home. And then I'm literally only a few blocks away. So finally, I make it across my apartment, literally across the street. And that's when I have a full blown panic attack. And I call her on the phone. I start to hyperventilate. Sorry, trigger warning, everybody. um, I start to hyperventilate, and I didn't know that I was doing that. But, my hands started to get very numb for the first time I've ever experienced this. The muscles around my mouth start to really close up. So I started to talk like this, and I was just scared, thinking, oh no, this is a stroke. I heard about people who get strokes and some of their symptoms, and I was just thinking of a million things that this could be. But I'm not feeling any pain. But my muscles are, contracting, like my hands are starting to crunch up real bad. And I'm there, like, feeling these weird surges of adrenaline from my chest straight to my brain. It didn't hurt. It almost feels like it's like a dopamine rush, right? And it's definitely adrenaline. And I told my girlfriend, call 911, because I don't know what's happening to me. And I kept repeating it over and over and over again, as I'm going through a panic attack. I don't know if everyone else here has been through it, but that was my first major panic attack. And she finally showed up. She walked across the street, and I said, didn't you hear me? I said, call 911. How come you didn't call 911? And she's like, oh, you must have hung up on me. And I'm looking at my hand. My hand was so clenched to the phone that I actually did hang up on her while I was telling her to call 911. But I started to feel better. And then she saw me, how clenched I was, and like I couldn't really move my mouth. And so she wanted to check with her mom, because her mom was a nurse, just to see what this was, because we were gonna go to the ER. But I started to feel better, and I could move, and I could speak better, and so I went inside to cool off, because this was around this time last year. Went inside, she gave me some juice, thinking, maybe is this my sugar level, because both my parents were diabetics, or one of them is diabetic. My father passed, but
sorry to hear.
yeah, thanks, no worries. Yeah, so I figured, it might be sugar issue, or because I didn't eat anything in the morning and I just took off, so I started to eat a snack here and there, and just started hydrating. Just sat outside the porch for a bit to cool off, and I started to just calm down. And she took my blood pressure, she took my sugar level, and I know everyone's probably thinking, why didn't you just run to the hospital right then and there? But I think because she's very familiar with a lot of medical practices, she's not a nurse, but she's definitely studying to be a nutritionist. She wanted to jot down all the symptoms first before we went, and then eventually we did go. So I went to the ER. The doctor said, everything's fine. We checked your blood work, and this was just a panic attack. And I'm like, what is a panic attack?
Right.
What you just had was a panic attack. And the reason why you were, freezing up and such is because you had, you were hyperventilating. And I'm like, that's weird, because I don't remember breathing quickly. So I didn't know that apparently, I guess you can hyperventilate even if you breathe with shallow breaths. That was my problem, is that I was breathing really shallow breaths, and I didn't even realize it, So, but by all means, stop me if I'm, going on and on. But
No, you're good.
okay. So that was my first major panic attack. That was last year, and then so after going to the ER, they just tell me to just relax and maybe see a counselor or a therapist. And this is where I started going on this crazy journey. Like, I was just, what the hell was that? I never had panic attacks, never had anxiety issues before in my life. So I call up a doctor, I see a doctor, and then I do a little research thinking this might be COVID. Found a video from a scientist from NIH on YouTube, saying that when COVID hits the brain, it actually reactivates are eternal fears or fears from childhood or anxieties, that were very little, very small when we were growing up, but they're amplified. And so my girlfriend and I assumed, because she had symptoms of COVID during that year, that this might be me with COVID symptoms in the brain. And so my dumb butt didn't get tested because I figured, well, I must have gotten it because I live with my girlfriend and she got the cliche shit symptoms. She had the lack of taste, sensation, and then cold, etc. And I didn't get any of that. I do remember getting a mild headache, but I thought that's because of dehydration because I have a problem with not hydrating enough. But so I just ruled it out as well as COVID in the head, COVID in the brain. So how do I get it out? How do I get rid of this? And, so I talked to my doctor. Not much help. I know everybody has different experiences, but for me, my experiences weren't great, to be honest. I decided to see another one, second opinion. I forgot what they're called. It's a different kind of medical practice, I guess. She was more advanced, I guess you can say. I told her my symptoms. I still wasn't really pleased. She just kept pushing the, go see a psychiatrist and get on some meds to make you feel better. And like, I just have a thing against it. The family, at least in my lineage, I guess, my family who has been on antidepressants have had some really bad negative side effects. They were not, I don't know how you say it. I guess they were numb to some important emotions and feelings in the family that I think they should have gone through, but then they didn't because the medicines were making them numb to it. And then, my mother, I think, started to feel more emotional, more sad, like it just started bawling tears more often with those medicines. And so I figured I don't want to do it. I don't want to go through that. I want to go more the natural road. So let me change my diet. So I was a vegan. No, I was a vegetarian. No, sorry. I was a pescatarian, just only eat fish meat. And then from there, I was like, okay, let me try vegetarian. And then from there, here in Los Angeles, we have a lot of vegan places. So I'm like, let me just try vegan because vegan food's good. So I was all that thinking, all right, maybe this can help for about a year or so. But I, wasn't really doing it correctly. One thing that, we don't consume when you're a vegetarian is vitamin B, which comes inside meats. So I was vitamin B deficient, I guess. But seeing this doctor, right, she tells me to see a psychiatrist, and I'm like, all right, fine, let's get it out of the way. But this kind of sucks, like I'm going here to find out what's happened to me physically because I never had this before. And all I'm being told is to go talk to a doctor that's gonna make me feel better because I'm being hurt. Like what? I tell this to my girlfriend every day. Why do I need to tell her? Whatever. All right. So maybe it's something going on mentally. I go and I see one, and once again, I'm still feeling weird about it because they just keep pushing me to see a psychiatrist to get drugs or get medicated for this. And I'm like, no, this is different. This is not. I haven't been. This is not something I've been dealt with, for many years, my whole life, or when I was a kid or a teenager. And this is none of that. This is something new. It has to be a virus or something. So I end up seeing a naturopathic doctor. It's an alternative medicine doctor. They focus on body functions and various kinds of symptoms throughout your whole body to find out what's really happening. And long story short, with her, she wanted to rule out that I didn't have any tumors on my adrenal glands. And so I was like, whoa, wait a minute, where'd that come from? Because I'm a primary care doctor never told me to get tested for this stuff. So this is kind of interesting. I did a little research on it. And it turns out that if you have a tumor on your adrenal glands, it could also increase anxiety and especially feelings of doom. And boy, was I having feelings of doom because I had one panic attack. I had a second panic attack going up a hill during the summertime. This was weeks after my first one. Was panicking because it was an open space environment. And one thing about agoraphobia is we're afraid of open spaces. Well, at least some of us. And I was, and there was no shade. So I have the trigger mechanisms of the heat bearing down on my back. And we made it pretty much a couple feet to the peak of this hill. It's almost a mountain. And I'm like, that's it, because the thoughts are just plaguing my mind. Like, if I get another one of those panic attacks at the top of the hill, I'm gonna have to call 911, and they're gonna have to fly their asses up here to pick me up. Sorry for my language.
No, you're good.
um, and yeah, so I'm just thinking about all the negative stuff. Like, no, it's gonna take much longer to get back down now. Oh no, So I was like, that's it. I hope you don't mind. I was telling my girlfriend, I hope you don't mind that we just go back. And it's so embarrassed because I'm like, I can see the peak of the mountain or the hill. We're just so close, but I didn't want to deal with the panic attack. And so I'm like, let's just go back. And so we trek it back down, and I'm starting to do shallow breathing. I noticed my hands started to get numb, and like I'm an X-Men or something. I'm like, oh, I know what's going to happen. My ultimate power is going to kick in, and I'm going to have hyperventilation syndrome. Right. So I'm like, screw this. Like, let me just start walking faster and faster to get down there. And we made it. We made it to the car, and I was like, oh, great, fantastic, no panic attack. But then it hits me right then and there in the car. Oh my goodness! Of all the times, right? I thought my girlfriend's car was my safety net. No, that's when my body and my mind decide to be like, no, screw it, you're having it right now. And so I'm having a panic attack, and I'm not telling her, just drive me to the ER, please. I don't know what's going on again with this panic attack thing. And I'm hyperventilating at the same time, and she's freaking out because this is the first time she actually witnessed it. And so she believes me. I'm not saying she didn't, but it's one thing seeing your loved one go through something. It's another thing having just missed it, So she sees it, from beginning to end. And I see the nurse, come by to the passenger side, and she brings a wheelchair, and I'm still frozen up, my hands and my arms are kind of frozen. And like, I'm still talking like this, because I can't move my lips. And I start to feel better already. It's all like, dude, maybe it is mental. Like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I suddenly feel better because I'm here with professionals that can somehow save me. I don't know. But I know in the back of my head, I'm not dying. I don't have a stroke. It's not a heart attack. I don't have any pain. So what the hell is this? And it's just frightening because it hits me out of nowhere. And so that was it. That was my last panic attack this time last year. Since then, a lot of things have happened. Immediately after the panic attack, I want to say about a week or two. Once again, trigger warning, and I'm sorry if this is triggering everyone or reliving these things. But so I didn't know about agoraphobia until I joined I think it was one of the many Facebook groups for anxiety disorder, and someone mentioned briefly about not being able to go outside, and they shared their story about getting a panic attack hiking, and I'm like, whoa, that sounds familiar. And then they said that they're agoraphobic, and I'm like, oh, let me look this up. And almost every single major symptom of it was hitting me, was totally me. And I'm like, oh no, this isn't good. So then I started to talk to my therapist about it, and they started to believe that what happened to me was that for 12 years, working an office job, driving to the office, driving back home, no problem, going on company lunches, no problem, doing things by myself, no problem, being at home by myself, going out to the desert in Las Vegas, like going outside in the desert area, open space, no problem. I go cold turkey because of COVID, and they tell me to work from home. Cold turkey from living that lifestyle, having that routine, that safety net, and then just cut it off. And then my therapist says that my mind at this point, being home for 2 years in these closed spaces, because I live in a small apartment and I don't get out much because I'm an introvert. I don't have friends. I have my girlfriend, she's amazing. But I don't have friends on my own that I can go out and spend time with. So I spend a lot of time indoors. And they said, well, that's what happened. You start to grow a safety net in your own home. And so by the time you finally do go outside, you're scared because your mind doesn't know what safety is anymore, because it's used to doing something for 12 years and suddenly it doesn't have it anymore. And so I'm like, holy crap, that makes sense to me. But this is a little too extreme. And I was looking at my girlfriend, I'm like, why didn't she go through this? She has her own issues, her own mental issues because of the pandemic, I noticed, but it's not agoraphobia. And I look at, I talk to my friend or my ex-coworker. He doesn't have it. I talked to another ex-coworker. Something similar happened to him, where he went out to a graduation ceremony and he got a little spooked by how many people were around him, but he doesn't have agoraphobia. And so then I was thinking to myself, okay, well, let me ask this other group. You know what? Let me just join an agoraphobia group, and that's how you and I met. We were in that group there together, and I joined that group, and I was seeing amazing stories that mirror mine. And then one of the worst things that I read about started happening to me. Now, this isn't one of those things where I manifested, I don't know if you believe that. They say, if you think about it too much, you're going to manifest it, right? Nothing like that at all. But towards the end of this job that told me to work from home, it wasn't doing great. They were working me to the bone. Even while I was working from home, I was getting too much stress. I was a manager. I said, you know what, that's it. Let me just find another job. This is just taking too much out of me. And I'm here at home working till 10 p.m. at night sometimes. It's ridiculous. So I called it quits, and I found another job, which was complete opposite. Very relaxing job, very flexible. So around that time period, I noticed, it's hard to explain unless you go through it yourself. I started to have symptoms of depersonalization. So depersonalization is basically disassociating yourself from reality, meaning you don't feel you are present or you don't feel you exist. And it's very frightening because it almost feels like you need to see your body. You need to jump out of your face, out of your head, and go into third person view and look at yourself to be like, oh, okay, I'm here. Whew. So looking in the mirror helps, right? But imagine if you don't see a reflection. It's like, whoa, where am I? Who am I? Like I'm watching this movie play out through the windows of my eyes, and it's frightening because I can't see myself. So those symptoms started to happen towards the end of that job, that I quit. And I started to feel this feeling of numbness, of like, not physical numbness, but emotional numbness, almost as if like I've been going through so much anxiety over the panic attacks, over the rapid resting heart rate that happened after my last panic attack last year, right? And I couldn't, the doctors couldn't explain what it was, right? But I wasn't dumb. I did some research, and I found out that some people who had COVID actually had rapid resting heart rates. So that's why I kept telling myself, maybe I had COVID in my head, and this is my symptom, agoraphobia, emotional distress, like anxiety issues. That's me. That's what I got. I could have had the flu symptoms. I could have had the cold. I could have had all the stuff that everyone at work is getting. No, I had to get the mental bullshit, which is crazy because now I have depersonalization. So I started to have that disconnection, and then it got worse. Trigger warning again. I'm sorry, guys. But it got worse. The depersonalization was the worst thing that I got out of this anxiety issue, because I started to get very afraid when I had these thoughts that just pop in. It was like a wave of fear of like, can't see yourself right now. Where are you? Like it's frightening. It was frightening me. Like it became so unreal. And yet my logical side is thinking like, this is nuts. This is nuts. But because I kept telling myself that, then I started to get worried and concerned that maybe I should check myself into like an insane asylum, because they'll understand what's happening. But I didn't want to go that deep route. I didn't want to keep going down to those deep thoughts and such. So I gave in to what the therapists were saying. I was like, all right, you know what? Clearly, I feel like I'm losing my mind. So what better person to help me than a therapist and a psychiatrist? So I eventually gave in and saw a psychiatrist. They prescribed me some medications. I did research on the side effects, and lo and behold, the side effects said you might get depersonalization. Right. Or if you're a teenager, you might think of suicide. Oh, man. Yeah. So I was like, no, thank you. No, thank you. I'm not going to spend money on something that's going to potentially make it worse. But I will do the light stuff. The light stuff was Ativan, I believe, because I did take that. The emergency doctor prescribed me Ativan, and he gave me like 5 of them so I don't get addicted. But I only took one after my second panic attack, and it kicked in 30 minutes after my panic attack. So yeah, that didn't help me. And I didn't know that I was supposed to plan it, right? Because when a panic attack happens, at least the first new ones, you don't really know that's going to happen, right? Until it keeps happening. Then you're like, oh yeah, now I know what causes it. Well, at that time, I didn't know what caused it. I didn't know what was making it worse. So yeah, the depersonalization was pretty bad. I had that like for a couple months, and things in my life, this might help your viewers or yourself, is that I didn't have good sleep for a couple months. I had sleep anxiety, and for the past, I want to say, a couple of years, I've had some bad sleep anxiety. So for me, what happens is, if I'm tired at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, ironically right now, right? But I'm not tired. But if I am, though, and I don't go to bed and really just try to sleep, and I miss that sweet spot of falling asleep, and what ends up happening is I start to have insomnia a little bit into 2 a.m., right? And then I'm like, all right, let me take a melatonin. What the melatonin is going to do is it gives me an artificial tiredness on top of me already trying to sleep, but I can't, because I missed that sweet spot of like just getting knocked out. And then it creates insomnia. And then it creates further anxiety because my body is so infused with artificial, or external tiredness from the added melatonin into my body that it gets me on edge completely. I lay on my left side and I get a heart palpitation, but because of the sleep anxiety, it scares the shit out of me. I've been having heart palpitations for years, so I'm used to them. But when this happens, then I just can't sleep well. So that, on top of these random bouts of depersonalization, it was just a horrible nightmare. So I took matters into my own hands after I did more research, on the psychological effects of the changes in lifestyle. And I talked to my therapist. I saw a new therapist. I felt the last one wasn't helping me too much, so I asked for a new one. And this new one was helping me. So I wasn't sleeping well. My relationship wasn't doing too great. I actually had, around that time period, I ended up having a break with my partner. We were separated for about a month, and I wasn't sleeping well. Much worse. I was sleeping much less, and I noticed that anxiety levels were through the roof. I didn't feel comfortable driving by myself. I didn't feel comfortable being at home by myself. It was one of my lowest points, I think, with having agoraphobia / severe anxiety disorder. And what I was doing, though, is mentally, I was keeping a journal in my head. Like, when these things start to happen, for me, the worst part for me is the depersonalization. Because if I can't trust myself, then I can't do anything, basically. I have to always rely on other people, and I don't want to do that. And I was reading stories in these Facebook groups that people are homebound, right? And I was like, I'm not going to be homebound because this just happened. It just happened, and I'm not going to make it worse. I'm not going to allow this to get worse. So in my head, I'm telling myself, okay, what happened yesterday? What happened today? Versus what happened during my good times. And I was thinking, I'm like, okay, well, I haven't been sleeping well. I keep reading that you got to get good rest, 8 hours at least. I wasn't getting 8 hours. I was getting 5 or less consecutively, and I have negative coping mechanisms when I'm depressed, like many people. So I had to deal with that. But in my mind, I knew what was creating the fuel to the flame, right? What was creating the fuel, what was fueling this additional anxiety in my life. And I knew I wasn't getting good rest. I knew I wasn't exercising. Now, here's a side note. For 12 years, I didn't realize this, but I was exercising. I was walking for nearly 30 minutes, I think, every day, probably more, depending on how far away I parked from my home. So anywhere from 30 minutes to 45 minutes a day of just walking. And I never really thought about that until you go cold turkey. You don't do that anymore, right? And you realize, oh man, I'm out of shape. Wow, shit, it's because I don't walk anymore. I'm at home 24/7 for 2.5 years. Well, that makes sense. I'm not exercising, I'm not getting good rest, and I'm probably eating bad. Well, it's no shit, that I have agoraphobia now. And I'm also not doing things by myself. So yeah, I have agoraphobia, I have anxiety. It's the different lifestyle change for me. That's what I find out about that. And now, have I ever had COVID? Well, I don't know yet. I'm thinking of taking that test that can find antibodies to see if I had it, but I have to get around to that. So procrastination is my other internal demon. So yeah, let's see. So, jotting down mental thoughts in my mind of what is making things worse. And then I work on a plan. I start working on a plan. I was like, all right, well, I keep hearing the buzzwords whenever people say, you got to exercise, you got to eat healthy, right? And they're really sometimes triggering because it's like, man, I got to do all this. And I've exercised before and I've been on a really good routine before. And like to really kick my butt and drive, I got to really put my blood, sweat, and tears into that. And I'm not really ready for that. So I talked to my therapist and my girlfriend at that time. Well, we started to come back together. And the topic of self-compassion came up, across the board. You got to be self-compassionate. You have to have self-compassion for yourself. You have to have patience for yourself. I really started thinking about that. I'm like, that's true. The only person that's really putting the pressure on me to cure myself from this ailment, from this disease, is me. I feel the pressure that I can't take my girlfriend out on a date. I can't even do the basic things for myself anymore. And I beat myself up. Or I feel the pressure of going out for a drive alone by myself to get a car wash because my car is dirty for about a year, not taking it for a car wash. It's dirty as hell. And I feel the pressure and I beat myself up when I don't get around to it. So I keep telling myself, like, I got to be compassionate, self-compassionate, and really pace myself. If I can't do it today, can't do it tomorrow, I'm going to do it next week, but actually do something. So I just took baby steps. I started to cut out sugary drinks. I used to drink a lot of, out here in LA, we do a lot of boba drinks, and it's very sugary. So I cut that out. Started to drink more water than ever before. We have a water distiller machine here. And so we purify our water. We make tea now. I tried drinking more tea. I think the alternative to sugar drinks was the seltzer water. That's all over the place. It's pretty popular out here. Different flavored seltzer waters. And I started to cook. For once in my life, I started to really cook meals. I got myself a vegan cookbook, and I started just cooking at home and eating healthier. And then the exercise thing kicked in too. I downloaded a free little app, started to get on the treadmill. We have a gym here in the apartment complex. I started thinking about, how I walked for 30 minutes. Maybe I can replicate that. 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at night. But maybe I'll start small. I'll start 15 minutes a day. And man, was I out of shape. Yeah, you don't realize how out of shape you are or how different your lifestyle has changed until you do a normal walk on a treadmill for nearly 10 minutes. I mean, at least for me. And I got scared, and then, anxiety kind of kicked in a little bit, like, oh no, why is my heart racing so fast? This is just only walking. But I got over that. I guarantee you, after the second week of doing this, you'll get used to it and it's back to normal a little bit anyways. So I started doing that. Started exercising more often, once a day, eating healthier. And then my relationship started to flourish again, getting back with my girlfriend, learning, from our setbacks and how we can improve. And we went to see couples therapy. And then the depersonalization went away. And then I always felt confident to go out and drive to the grocery store by myself to pick up groceries. All right, got to do baby steps. You can order, out here, you can order them online and then you go and pick them up in the parking lot. So I did that. And I think that was one of my biggest triumphs. I did it at night because for me, the sun is triggering. So I don't know if that helps anybody. Yeah, so I drive at night, right? But I arrived, and of course, before I arrived there, halfway there, I started to get the numbness in my hands. But I told myself, this is okay because I can always turn around and go back home. I am in control. I am in control. I have an exit. I can turn around and go home. I am not going to get a panic attack. That's what I told myself. And it helped. It helped because I was like, okay, well, the worst that I can do is drive up to the parking lot area of the grocery store and then turn around and exit and go right back home. Right. Yeah, right. And I was telling myself, like, yeah, I'm not going to really force myself, but I'm going to do as much as I can and try. And so I gave myself that opportunity. I showed up, I parked, I went on the app, I told them I'm there. And I started to get a little anxious, a little edgy. And I was like, I can't stand this anymore, but I need to pick up the groceries. I already told them I'm here. So I did something different. I told myself, like, I've been having this consecutive fear whenever I'm in the car by myself. So what happens if I just get out of the car? So I got out of the car And I looked around. I looked at people. I'm not that I'm anti-social, but I'm not very social. But for once, though, I took comfort in being around people, and that's the one double-edged sword of agoraphobia. At least for some people, is that agoraphobia teaches us, well, not teaches us, but sometimes tells us to be afraid of being alone. And to me, that's the double-edged sword, because if I'm out there doing stuff by myself and I see people out and about, the general public near me, I don't feel alone anymore. And I start to feel confident. Well, I'm doing something by myself and I'm not afraid anymore. Because the worst thing that can happen is I start getting a panic attack and I ask somebody next to me, hey, can you hold on to me? Can you give me a hug, bro? Or something like I'm getting a panic attack and I need to feel safe. And I feel safe if I'm, holding on to you. I don't know. I'm just having those thoughts in my mind, thinking like the worst they can say is no. But that instant, validation of like, I see you, you're here, you're present, you're okay. And that can help. And so I was telling myself, like, the worst that's ever going to happen is I'm just going to tell somebody, hey, can you stand right next to me? I'm having a panic attack. I just need to calm down. I just need to talk to someone. And I didn't have to. I mean, I didn't talk to anybody. I started to feel better. I started to focus on my breathing. What I did was I was pacing, outside my car. And this is a weird thing too. I left the door open. I left the driver's side door open. For some reason, part of me felt like I needed to have it open because it was my connection of being there. Yeah, of staying in that moment, in that zone, but also giving myself a break and be like, okay, well, I'm taking it easy. I'm not going to go all or nothing on this. I need to do baby steps. And I made it this far. And I'm not having a panic attack. I call it an attack when it gets into hyperventilation for me. So I started to feel better. And I was like, damn it, I could do it. I can do it. I could just take a break when I need to. And this is my break. And guess what? I'm still alone out here. I'm doing it. And I'm not afraid of this open space. I'm not afraid of being out here, at this grocery store. I've been here many times with my girlfriend, but just this time I'm by myself and it's okay. And so the groceries showed up, got in the car, came home. I did a video. I don't know if you want to see it. It's on there. You gotta browse for it. It's been months. I was like a triumph video telling everybody that I did it, and that really pushed me in the right direction to feel like, you know what? One thing I learned is that you do have the power to control yourself in a way, control tendencies. And it's not always all the time, understandably. But for these kinds of moments where I feel confident to go try to do some exposure therapy in my own way that works for me at my pace and I'm in control, well, yeah, let me try that. Let me do it. And let me see what happens because I am in control. I can drive right back home if I'm not feeling comfortable. So that was a big triumph for me. And that pushed me in the right direction to feel more confident to do things by myself. And then the second thing was that I was dreading always taking my car to the car wash because the first time I got panicky was, driving that direction. I eventually did that a few weeks ago, took my car out there. The moment I arrived to the car wash, I did not feel the numbness in my hands. Previous time that I did, and I started to hyperventilate a little bit, so that's why I drove home. But this last time, I didn't feel it. I felt confident. I was like, I made it this far. Let's see how much further I can go because I'm looking around. I see people here. All right, and at this car wash, they have two car wash attendees that use like a broom or a brush, to take the hard grime off of the rims and such. So I see people are right there. But of course, like many people, we're always thinking about the evil stuff. And for me, the evil stuff is, no. The worst part is not driving there. The worst part is when you're in the machine, because what happens if it stops? That's me in my mind, right? So that was my fear. Sorry, trigger warning. But that was me telling myself, hyping myself up, like, okay, if you make it that far, great. But the worst part is getting stuck, right? You don't want to get stuck because then you feel trapped. So, of course, I started to panic a little bit, but not bad. Not bad. It wasn't bad. I think it started happening when I couldn't see anything in front of the windshield. This is when I started to feel closed in. But I looked on the ground, I focused on my breathing. I was talking to my girlfriend on the phone. So you can have a lifeline, it's not cheating. It helps. So talk to your significant other or your safety person if you have to while going through your exposure therapy. And it was helping me out. And before you know it, the machine finished and I was out. I drove home and I was like, fuck yeah, I did it. Sorry for my language.
Oh, you're good.
But I was so excited, so thrilled that, I'm making strides. And the worst part of all of this is that, the the depersonalization is just not there now, Um, so fast forward to today, I talked to my therapist telling her how I'm figuring things out, that I figured out what makes it worse, what brings back the worst part of all this for me, and how I can take control of that. Last weekend, I went with my girlfriend to an arcade, a really big arcade, and like I grew up in these places, as a kid, but the way they have it nowadays, it's pretty impressive. So we had a good time, um, and what happened? Forgot what happened.
Played some
Oh,
games.
yeah, play some games. I think the drive there, there was one instance where there was like a traffic started to build up, and it actually came to a halt, and I was in the middle of the lane. So, being agoraphobic, I felt trapped again.
Yeah.
But I didn't panic though. That's the great thing that's been happening. That's good, is that by me driving more often, even if I'm not driving alone, but driving with my safety partner, it's still getting that exposure of driving far away from home, being in the middle of nowhere, being, stuck in traffic in the middle lane. Like I'm just starting to get used to it. And I'm starting to tell myself in my mind, I'm not going to be here all day. And if I am, in the rare chance, like, I don't know, a meteor crash landed on the highway and there's no way out, hey, at least I can get out of the car, because I'm not going to stand in this, I'm not going to sit in here and suffer through this panic attack, you know? And I noticed for me, it's an exit. It's a way out, is to take control. So I want to feel more of that. And I started to explore that further. I'm in control. I'm in control. I'm not going to feel this. I'm not going to feel that. Instead, I'm going to do this. I got to do my errands. I got to go out and I got to, get groceries. I got to do this for myself, and I'm going to handle it. And I think that's how I've been combating a lot of my anxiety. Granted, it's frustrating to hell that there's just some things that don't add up sometimes. You always want to, at least for me, I want the scientific evidence of what it is. If it's a disease, if it's a virus, it's, all right, what do I got to do to take, to fix that, it's my personality type to just fix things, in my case, fix myself. So, yeah, that's my story. In terms of community, I've been trying to help other people in that Facebook group. Now that I joined the one that you introduced me to, I can pitch in there as well too. I've, just like I did tonight, shared my story with other people. I talk about various topics. I noticed that people with anxiety disorders, we all share, and this is what's really impressive, is that I started to make friends with people that have anxiety issues, specifically people who have agoraphobia issues, because it's something that we can relate to in a very vulnerable way. And you can't find that anywhere. It's hard to find that through anybody else, sometimes even through our own partners, because unless they live through that, they will never understand what it means to say, I can't drive today, I can't stay alone today, So it's been fantastic. Like I really encourage everyone that if those of you who do not feel you have any friends, like, check out these agoraphobia groups, or anxiety groups, because you'll meet other people that are going through the same thing that you're going through, and it's a big sign of relief that other people that are going through these things exist. So you're not alone. But that's me. That's my story.
I definitely love fixing people, or not fixing people, but I want to fix everything too. And when it happened to me, like, so I don't know. You mentioned that you might have listened to one of the episodes, but I was at work and I got a UTI, so I had to pee like every 5 minutes. And my boss, like, I was a cashier, so I had to like ring the register. There was a bunch of people, bright lights, and my boss never wanted to cover for me, but I kept having to ask her like every 5 minutes. I kept having to piss her off because I gotta go to the bathroom because of this UTI, and I don't know if it was the stress or what, but I had never experienced anxiety before, ever, and I started to get dizzy, and I kept trying to explain it to her, like, when I'm not on the register, I'm actually not dizzy, but when I am on the register, I'm starting to get dizzy, and she didn't really understand, and I had to sort of choose between lose my job or lose my mind. And for the first 3 years, I've been agoraphobic for 6 years. But for the first 3 years, I was convinced that I was just dying. And I was also afraid of going to see a doctor, which, hearing your experience, them all telling you that it was a panic attack, I probably should have. I would have known a lot sooner of what was happening to me. But yeah, I was just convinced if I stepped foot into a doctor's office, they were going to tell me I have like 3 days to live. And I didn't want to hear that, or rather not know. So I spent 3 years dying in my mind, and eventually, after not dying, I feel like the people around me were always telling me the right answers. It's in your head, it's anxiety, and that's, hard to hear. I know a lot of people are upset with that it's all in your head, because you definitely experience real symptoms, hard to breathe, your heart's going. But it starts in your head, or at least, for me sometimes, you mentioned that you have a vitamin B deficiency, or you had one, and I do think, exercise and eating well and getting your sleep, like if you don't have sleep, you're tired, and especially if you have anxiety, you think, oh, something must be wrong, and sometimes you don't connect the two. And for me, I smoke cigarettes like almost every 10 minutes, and I drink all the soda, and I eat bad food, so I know that the physical aches and pains that I'm feeling are connected to that. But sometimes my mind gets jumbled up with that, and I'm like, why am I feeling sticky? And you also mentioned, when you're agoraphobic and you don't leave your house, that you don't get exercise. I'm sitting in my chair 90% of the time, so walking around like a normal person, that's just not a reality. But yeah, it's hard to tell, at least at the beginning, when you've never had a panic attack before, the difference between, is this a heart attack? Am I having a stroke? Or is this panic? And it took me a long time to accept and figure out that, I consider myself aware, I guess, a little bit of, stuff. And I never thought that I could be doing this to myself. You mentioned, so how long were you housebound for? Or yeah.
No, I don't know. I don't think I ever was housebound. I think that was one of the blessings that I've had.
Okay.
What happened was, after my second panic attack, I started to have high bouts of anxiety of just getting up from sitting down, or getting up from laying down. My heart would be racing, and I never understood why, because I wasn't thinking of anything frightening. And that was during a time where I was kind of upset with the healthcare system, that I was going through, because they weren't giving me answers of what that was. And they just kept telling me it's anxiety, but I'm like, I'm not thinking of anything, I just woke up, and now I'm like, not out of breath or anything, but it's as if I just ran a mile for no reason, and like suddenly my heart's just racing. And then, so I filed that away in the back of my mind, because I don't have that anymore, thank goodness. But what ended up happening was, I started to kind of put away going out on dates with my girlfriend, going up to we used to call them small adventures, discovering new restaurants in town or in the town over, or going to parks, seeing some ducks and birds, things like that. We used to do that a lot about a year and a half ago. But, because of what happened to me, that all has been put on hold. So I wasn't housebound, though, because we still would go out and visit my mom. And I noticed, here's something that's interesting. Whenever I had to drive for a long period of time, like say an hour, and I was doing okay, didn't have any panic attacks driving, because I knew going to my mom's and my family's house was safe, because I trusted them. I still do. And so I felt safe going over there. So I'm not thinking too much about the drive itself, like, oh no, I'm in a long stretch of highway. So I didn't feel I was ever housebound, but I noticed that I wasn't doing a lot of activities, much less doing things alone, driving by myself, So yeah, I mean, I can go outside right now just fine. I think it was a few months ago that I went for a walk around the block. I made a video about it, but procrastinating doing that. So I can go outside. I think the peak that happens to me is if I go to an open space environment like another hill or another desert terrain area, where there's no shade, no buildings in sight, and I'm expected to go walk out there. One thing that's triggering is my girlfriend wants to go to a fair, in this heat that we had like 88 weather heat nowadays. But the fair is in an open ground. It's open spaces, hardly any shade. And we used to go to the fair years ago before I had this panic attack and anxiety. And so thinking about it, and then, kind of just turns me off to be like, this is not going to work out. Like, what am I going to do? This heat, this trigger, and like, I know she's so understanding, but I feel the pressure of like, nah, she wants to do this and her friends are backing out. And I've always done this with her, always going out there. And, we've gone to have fun at these fairs, but now I have agoraphobia and I got to deal with it. But I think what's great is, we have such a strong bond and a good level of understanding that because she saw me suffer, she's lived with me. So she knows these problems are real, and she also sees me try. And I think for her, what matters the most is that she sees me going out and trying. And if we go to that fair and I'm trying, and then I start to have, numbness in the hands while we're walking out in this open space, and I say, that's it, I can't do anything, we need to go back to the car, she'd be totally down with that, totally understanding, because she sees me try, and it shows that I'm not, not being lazy or, saying no, I don't want to do this. This is a real issue, real health problem. So, yeah.
I actually met my wife a month before any anxiety happened, so she's been with me the entire time. And
there you go.
It's crazy to think that, she basically I was a baby, not leaving the house, not going anywhere. She had to do everything. And, like, I've often felt like a burden and wanting to push for her. But yeah, it's definitely amazing to have a partner that can understand that severity of, the situation that we're finding ourselves in. But I wanted to mention that, a year ago, I actually beat my anxiety, at least in my head, completely. I was able to, for the most part, before that, I could go to my mom's house, which is 5 minutes away, but other than that, I couldn't go anywhere. My mom's house was like my second safe place or whatever. But a year ago, I was able to go, a couple hours into the woods, go camping and have no fear. And how I did that was I found one thing that I could do that would calm me down. So I say this to everybody, my therapist did this progressive muscle relaxation technique on me where you squeeze your fists and you focus on the tension and, while you're breathing, and you switch to your arms and then your shoulders, and, by the time, the meditation's over, you're calm. And in reality, every single meditation works. If you go into whatever it is you're doing, grabbing ice, counting to 10, anything, if you go into it thinking it's not going to work, then it won't work. But if you allow yourself to become distracted, even for just a few minutes, your thoughts are causing the anxiety. So if you can stop your thoughts, then you can calm down. So what I did was, I found a way to calm myself down, and that gave me confidence. So I kept going further and further. And people talk about exposure therapy all the time, like, walk a couple steps, walk a little further, walk down the block, cross the street. I find it, if you try to do something normal, it's a lot easier because, if you're going out thinking about facing anxiety, then anxiety's on your mind. And I found the longest I've been without anxiety is when I'm not thinking about it at all. And like, I'll go to the store and I'll try to do something normal. I'll buy something and I'll come back. And that would be an exposure therapy for me that would be successful.
Yeah.
So I agree. You mentioned that you're pushing yourself. Did you ever make it back on top of the mountain, or is that a goal for you to make it to that peak where you couldn't, quite make it up?
Yeah. So here's the thing: we actually went to that peak, and that's actually where I proposed to my girlfriend a few years back. So Yeah, I mean, we've been there before. It's just because of this, what recently happened, and it just kind of pushed me away to not want to do that. I think eventually we will. Like I said earlier, I did reach the milestone of going back to washing my car again, where it all kind of started. Driving around the block, driving down the same street where I had that first panic attack. Um, you know, yeah, revisiting another street that used to trigger me for 3 months. Every time I drove by it, I would be afraid. Even if I'd be driving with my partner, I would always be afraid. I always felt like I had a bad omen or it was cursed or something, and I got used to it. I got, like you said, when you make it part of your daily life, you don't think about it anymore. And I think that's how I was able to overcome thoughts of depersonalization. Because whenever they hit me, I'm not afraid anymore. I look at it as, oh, it's a symptom of a cold. It's like equivalent to, oh, I got a runny nose. When I think of it that way, when I turn the mental side effects and conditions, and I rewire my brain to think of them as physical conditions, to be like, it's a runny nose, I got a flu, it'll go away. Like, let me just drink some tea or something. It helps me, like I tell myself that a lot of the times, that emotional distress and anxiety can be the symptoms of something else. And one day actually kind of proved me that. Uh, I was by myself, and girlfriend was out with her friends or something, and these were the times where it was a little tough for me to be alone. And I did learn something from it though. But for the first 15 minutes, for me, it usually is kind of tough for me. So I started to dive deep into my psyche a little bit to see where does this fear of being alone come from, and I look as far back as a child, and then I do recall that my parents were very busy and occupied arguing a lot of the time when I was a child. They had a lot of arguments that were just really bad, and it was just I was the only child, and so I experienced that kind of atmosphere and environment that was very negative and uh, wasn't really great, fantastic to be around. So I noticed that I felt alone or neglected. You know, uh, my father was, I guess you can say, a more aggressive person. So whenever he would throw things around the house in a fit, because whatever reason that he would come up with, and then he would leave, for the weekend, kind of just ditched my mom and me while he goes and does drugs or something. It really made me feel like, okay, well, I'm here taking care of my mom, but none of these parents are looking after me. My mom's here too much in distress and, and in pain because what my dad's putting her through. And here I am, you know, very upset at my dad and a lot of men in the world that resemble my dad through the habits. And I feeling like my childhood was kind of neglected a little bit. And so I felt alone, but I wasn't afraid growing up of being alone. So during that time when my girlfriend went to hang out with her friends, and I started looking at that and I started thinking as far back as I can about my father, and started telling myself, okay, well, he wasn't always a bad man. Later on in life, before he died, he turned for the good. He became an amazing father, an amazing grandfather to his grandchildren. Like he's just a better man than he was when he was younger. And I didn't always have bad times with him. There were a lot of good times, and he taught me a lot of morals and values in life. And when I start thinking about that feeling of like, okay, let me picture the good times, and I start feeling his presence, like, hey, yeah, you know what? There were good times. We did have a good talk, or when we laughed about those things, or when he encouraged me to pursue my career or something. Like I felt that support, and I didn't feel alone. So I started thinking and realizing, like, okay, there is something going on here with being alone and the fear, because I no longer felt alone when I thought about my father in the positive way when he was there for me. So started to connect a little bit of the two, and that to me kind of helped out when I started thinking that, all right, these emotional distresses and things that are mentally happening to me could be the symptom of something else. So let me go look into the root of the problem. If it is a root, let me look into my childhood. really kind of let go of the past, forgive my father, and move on, and rebuilt that confidence that, hey, I moved out on my own and lived on my own for many months before my girlfriend moved in. So I was on my own just fine. And I even suffered like a major scare when I had my first heart palpitation and I didn't know what it was. And I called the 24-hour nurse line and I was fine. I didn't have a panic attack, but I was living by myself and I did it. So I know I can do it again. And so, like you said, you just got to make it routine, like it's part of everyday living. Um, and here's the tip, going off of that concept, these things that are happening to me, through anxiety is part of my everyday life now, whether I like it or not. And it's getting better, but I've accepted it. Like, I'm not fighting it. I'm not going to be afraid of it anymore. I'm looking at it as, okay, I know why now. I know more now than I did before. And that's why I no longer have panic attacks. And it's not because I'm avoiding things. I'm actually going out and doing things, and I'm feeling, I call it edgy and
Anxious.
Anxious, yeah. And there's a different feeling. I call it jittery, jitters, where like you feel an inner jitter, that normally, if you allow it to escalate, it turns into a panic attack. And but whenever I get the jitters, I control it. I tell myself I'm not gonna let it consume me. I've been out here before. I've been to this grocery store before, or my girlfriend's in the bathroom. She'll be out anytime soon. Or if I don't feel comfortable here, I get to walk over there. I'll go over here. I'll go to this aisle where I feel more comfortable. Like, I'm in control of my life. I'm not gonna be afraid of this. But I'm also not avoiding it because I'm still in that environment where normally a year ago I say, screw this. Let me go walk to the car, or let me call my girlfriend and tell her, let's just go home. Like, I'm not feeling it here. Let's just leave. And I'm not leaving. I'm still in the environment. I'm just, like you said, making it part of everyday living, not being afraid anymore, just going off my life. So I started browsing for things to shop for in the grocery store, and eventually the jitters went away. So it went from having panic attacks to having depersonalization, and now no more depersonalization, no more panic attacks, and now easing away from just having jitters. I call them jitters now.
Is there anything you do other than like self-talk when you're starting to feel anxious or jitters to like stop yourself, or is it just like telling yourself that this is all normal and I know what's happening to me?
Yeah. So for a while it was hard for me to try to do the focus on the breathing part, but I noticed the last time when I went to the gas station and it hit me when I was inside the machine with a car wash, I did focus on the breathing. I told myself, all right, I'm gonna breathe in 4 seconds and breathe out 6 or 8 seconds or whatever it is, 4, 8, I don't know. And the fact is as long as I focused on it and tried it, I started to feel like a blanket of like, what's wrong with me? Not in a negative way, but like, what am I worried about? And that was amazing. When I told myself that, like, I got nothing to worry about. Like, this thing's going to be over in seconds. I've been through this machine before, and I look up at the window and like, I see soap suds, and I'm like, this is normal. Like, nothing bad is happening. And I tell myself, well, one time, this is me being a comedian in my head, but one time there was the time when the machine actually stopped. And then I told myself, well, it just continued. They're not going to let the machine just stop and have the customer stuck in there forever. But it's just, I think, yeah, focusing on the breathing does help. I will admit, though, during my second panic attack, I tried, and I just was not in the right state of mind because, of course, when you're going through your very first panic attacks, they take over, right? So it was hard for me to focus on the breathing. I felt myself like I was forcing myself to do proper breathing, but I knew that I wasn't calming down when I had that. So months later, a year later now, whenever I get a jitter, what I do. Okay. So what I started to do is I started to just occupy myself by being busy. One of the good, I call it training, that I did for myself was when I was alone here at home. Thankfully, I never had panic attacks at home. But when I was alone at home, I started to do dishes. Now, many people like doing dishes, right? But to be honest, once you do them, the anxiety kind of goes away because it's like, oh, I got to focus on cleaning this dish here, and oh, would you look at that? It looks like we're running low on dish soap here, or or dish gloves, or sponges or something. Like I start just focusing on the task and focusing on like errands and, like you said, everyday living. It's normal. Like, and if I have anxiety, so what? Like I'm listening to music. That's another thing too. I turn on music. I discovered Brazilian samba, and I didn't know how much I loved it. And I play it when I do dishes and I'm by myself. Um, it helps. It helps because it really puts you in that mindset of like, this is going to be fun. This is going to be great. Even though it's not really fun to do dishes, but it's going to be great in the sense that I'm going to get through this time of being by myself by not focusing on being by myself because I'm just living my life. So, yeah.
When I feel anxious or the jitters, I usually will try to call anyone, my wife or someone from the group. But during a panic attack, I've never actually been able to do any sort of like technique or meditation or focus on my breath. I'm just like, I'm dying. It's in the, all my thoughts are just racing, and I can't really focus on anything like that. All the techniques or whatever, grab ice, the progressive muscle relaxation that I like, I do that beforehand, during the jitters or the anxiousness. You mentioned earlier on that the day is more triggering than the night, and I find most people I talk to, it's actually the opposite. I myself am more afraid of the day than the night, just because I've always considered the night to be peaceful. Most of my life I've stayed up late playing video games with my friends, and no one's around, and it's just nice. But at the same time, you said that when you go out to a store, being around other people sort of makes you feel comfortable. So I wonder, what is it about the day? Is it the heat? Because I'm in Arizona, and I think you said you might be from California, so the heat, it's hot. So yeah.
Yeah. To be honest, I think it's a little bit of PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, in a way. When I had the panic attacks, I'm I'm already almost going to be pretty much 40 years old. So getting them this late in a way is daunting for me, and frightening as hell because I never had them before. So they happened during the day. They happened during the heat of the summer last year. And I think my mind and subconscious fear just kind of told me, hey, when it's hot outside, you're going to get anxious fast. And yeah, in early June, when we started to get heat waves out here, I drove my car up the street. I should have journaled. I should have, wrote this down to understand what was happening, but I'm pretty sure I probably wasn't sleeping right, leading up to this day, but it was pretty hot. And I drove up the street, and normally I have no problems driving up the street, but I drove up the street and I felt massive, like, oven heat. If you ever have the oven on for like 10 minutes and then you open it, like, imagine just standing in it. That's how I felt. And my car does have AC, but it's not a new car, so it takes a while for that AC to really kick in.
Desert car is not fun, especially without AC. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, exactly. So I felt that, and subconsciously, like, I don't know if it was my body, but it definitely wasn't my mind, because I was not afraid. When I was driving up there, I was not afraid at all. But as soon as that heat wave touched my skin and my whole body, I started to feel anxious. And I'm like, no way. Last time I felt this way was when I had that panic attack in the heat. And I'm like, I can't do this. Screw this shit. And I did an illegal left turn, illegal U-turn. And I just went back home. I said, okay, you know what? There is always tomorrow. But I know for a fact after that, like, I do get triggered physically. And it's not emotionally. It's physical triggers. And I talked to my doctor about that. I said, hey, why is it that I get physically triggered by heat and like this? And she says that, I don't know if it was her or an article I read, but I found out that the heat actually releases a certain hormone in the body that is the same hormone that gets released when you have a panic attack. And I was like, whoa, that makes sense. That makes sense. So now, it's not to say if you jump into a jacuzzi that's just as hot as the temperature outside that you're going to get a panic attack. That's true. It's not saying that, but there's something about natural air, that when it gets to a certain temperature, in your body just starts to overheat in that kind of environment. Um, it triggers that hormone, the panic, the fight or flight response. So um, I did negatively cope from that, but at the same time I learned. But I call it negatively for me because I was avoiding the day, not like a vampire, but avoiding doing exposure therapy alone during the day. So that's when I started to be like, okay, well, if I'm ever going to do something, for myself, I'm going to do it at night, so I don't have to deal with that massive amount of heat. And here's another thing too, and trigger warning for people that may already have this. um, Growing up, I did have a phobia of high ceilings. Yeah, so like cathedrals, for example. And then I didn't notice this until one day I was at the park and I was laying down on the grass and I looked up at the sky and I got scared. I felt like it was reverse vertigo, and I was like, "What the hell is this? This is weird." And then later on in my 20s and 30s, when I go to the beach and I lay on the sand and I look up at the sky and I see clouds, I get scared. I'm like, "Oh, whoa, that's so weird. I feel like I'm going to fall to the heavens or something. That's so frightening." It wasn't bad. I mean, what's that?
I've had that happen so many times where I'm out in open
Yeah,
space and I think gravity is going to stop working and I need to stand next to something so I can grab
yeah,
it. Yeah,
dude.
it's
Totally,
scary.
man.
It is
It
scary.
is frightening. Hell yeah. And like, I think with that agoraphobia, it amplified that for me because, it just got to that point where it's like, all right, well, I'm driving in the day, and I normally don't have that problem when I'm driving because I have the hood over, my head. I'm not looking at the sky, but it is in my peripherals that I can see the sky. It's hot, and I can see that I'm stuck in traffic or I'm cornered or I'm in a spot, driving that I'm not comfortable being in. But at night, I don't get to see more than half of any of that. I don't see the sky at all, which is a bonus. So I don't have that problem. And it's much cooler. So there you go. I don't have that problem. And not many people are out. Like you said, it's very peaceful. So that's that much better. So there's a lot of good for me that happens. And I have not had a panic attack at night. So I don't have any trigger mechanisms about driving alone in my car at night. So I like to always tell myself, and then I feel it inside, that it's because I didn't have panic attacks at night in the car. I had it in the heat, in the summer, in my car while driving. And now I'm able to drive in the heat somewhat during the day, um, and do exposure therapy. Um, but yeah, in the beginning, I did start off driving at night and it just felt better because I didn't have to worry about the things that I was looking at anymore. So,
I've often took out my dog like for a walk and I can see myself where I'm walking like ahead of me. That's me floating and I have to talk to myself and be like, if that happens, I must be the coolest person in the whole world. I guess I'm going out that way. But it's terrifying, and I do think a part of being more afraid of the day than the night is just there's so much more to see. I think
yeah,
you touched on that. There's just a lot more going on, a lot more to focus on, and at night it's
yeah.
just nice and peaceful. I didn't watch your entire live video where I actually found you from on that group, but I heard you mentioned rooms within one of the groups that you were doing or whatever. Do you
Hmm.
often talk to people on there in rooms or go live in one of those groups or?
I used to, a few months ago. I used to maybe once a week, once every other week. Before I did the rooms, I was invited to a messenger group to work on an agoraphobic workbook. I think it's called Agoraphobia, the workbook, or something like that. It's on
Hmm.
Amazon, and it has a lot of worksheets and exercises. So it was kind of like a class. And this user wanted to get more people involved to kind of work on it together, so we can have like kind of like accountability buddies. And I was like, oh, that sounds great because everything else is not working out, and I really don't like being in groups where people just complain all the time because then it just gets triggering for me. It makes me feel like, oh man, it's hopeless. Oh no, I'm watching somebody going through a panic attack. I'm getting triggered.
Right.
So I wanted to try something else, and so I joined the group. but nobody was serious about it. And so I'm like, oh, this sucks. Nobody's really serious doing this. Nobody wants to get together on a Friday or something or whatever. And people just wanted to be in a messenger group to be like, hey, look at me, I'm outside. I'm like, guys, we already have that Facebook group. We don't need a messenger for this. Messenger is supposed to be for this workbook thing, and no one's taking it seriously. So then I just created my own, and I was like, all right, here it is. I made a Google Doc. Here's the outline. Here's what we're going to talk about. Basically, like, I'm a teacher of this thing, and here's the book I want everyone to have by next week. And then, like, I had like 5 people dedicated. 4 of them got the book. They were all ready. And then here comes showtime. No, I can't make it. So I'm like, all right, I understand. All right, next week, here it goes. One person shows up. Okay, third week. Hey guys, what works best for you all? Yeah, Friday. All right, here it comes Friday, and nobody showed up. So at that point, amongst many problems with our society, it came to accept that, when people have issues and they go to Facebook groups, and they vent out, they want to be heard, right? But a lot of people also don't want to put in the extra effort to be there to support other people who can also support them. Because, to be honest, technology is against us. I think technology has divided us for over the past 100 years. And people want things to kind of land in their lap. People want things to be set up. They want, I want this class to have 20 people already there when I show up. If there's nobody else there, I'm not going to stick around. Sorry, Damien. And that happened to me. And I was disappointed. That's why I don't really like that original group that you found me in, because it's kind of like, hey, you do something for them, they're not going to really be there for you. So what I did is, okay, I'm looking here, I did a live once in a while, but I tried rooms, and it my first room session brought in 25 people, and I didn't know why. I'm like, this is weird. I mean, this is not new to me. I grew up on the internet when it first came out. So Yahoo Chat, Yahoo Voice Chat was basically the rooms of the 90s. Anybody can be on the mic, and it really felt like you were in a room with a lot of people. So I tried that. We had a fantastic turnout. I think we had an ex-police officer turned ex-paramedic who was going through agoraphobia issues. We had many parents show up, a lot of mothers and fathers. And what I started to do since then, about once every other week after that, I created a random topic that I felt I wanted to share and talk about, because nobody was doing that. Nobody was talking about some ideas on how to get through things. Instead of just like, hey guys, I can't do this, or hey, negative stuff this, negative stuff that, and like, when people are at their lowest, they don't need to be reminded of how low it can go. People need to start seeing positivity and proactivity. It's the biggest important part is being proactive in trying something new, trying something that can work. So I figured maybe through my examples, doing the room chats of various topics, and I had topics ranging from, making friends to relationship issues while having agoraphobia, and how to overcome, negative thoughts, when you're trying to do exposure therapy or something like that. And people would show up. It's not the greatest because it's kind of like a live, and some people would eavesdrop and then they would just hop out and not stick around, and then I feel like I have to repeat myself every time. But to answer your question, yes, I did do the rooms for a bit, and then I think they disabled it or something for a while. But yeah,
I often try to get to solving. Obviously a lot of people want to tell me what's going on, and the first thing I'll do is ask what's triggered it. And if it's a random thing, I'm sort of at a loss for words. I try to help them get out of it, but I try to find the source and, help them work through it. But, sometimes, especially even for me, like, I've beaten it before. I know how to do it. Face your fear, be confident, have techniques to help you out during the way. But the last panic attack that brought me back to being housebound, because I've now been housebound for maybe 6 months since beating it or whatever. Like, when you're reminded of the panic, the fear is just so big. And agoraphobia is all about avoiding fear and being afraid of fear itself. And like, it's weird because there's two parts of me. There's one that like knows what it's like to beat anxiety or to face your fears and be successful. And I've definitely had, cried happy tears many times, just going out and doing it, and, I know I'm not going to die. It's just I'm so afraid of feeling those feelings again. And, a lot of people aren't in the headspace of, because you do have to go through the fears. And like, you might have your techniques that help you get out of it or whatever, but sometimes the best thing you can do is just to sit there and experience it. And I know a lot of us like to escape or do our techniques or whatever it is to get away from the fear as quick as possible and then avoid it forever. But sometimes you have to actually go through it and not run away and show yourself that you can get through it. I'd be curious if you would want to continue to do what you were doing with me and with my group and, share to us what you were trying to do to them. I don't know if you stopped doing that with them or not, but I'm trying to. So basically what happened with this group that I invited you to is like, I was in one of those bigger anxiety groups and maybe I made like a post or whatever and I had someone message me and I, made a friend. And as you said earlier, it is a lot easier to make friends as far as the agoraphobia community because we're very unique type of person. Anyways, I got invited into this group chat and one of my biggest triggers is feeling alone or being alone. Like I feel like, if I pass out, nobody's there and, who's going to call an ambulance if I'm unconscious and dying? So when anyone's there, like, even you said when you're at the grocery store, someone might help you out and that's comforting. And, one of the first things I do when I'm starting to get jittery, or anxious is call people. But with this group chat, people are on 24/7. And yes, there are a lot of people that are like, I have a stomach ache and they just come in and, I don't want to say complain because but they just, there's a lot of negative as far as just talking about their panic, what's wrong with them, and then, receive the help and jump out. There's not a lot of positive going on. There's not a lot of, and there is, there, when people go out and they go further, they definitely mention it. But there's much more of, I need help, and that's good, I'm happy to help people. But I think a lot of people are in a headspace of like, the fear is just so overwhelming and also there's no escape. There's a click that happens, and I think you've hit that click to where you've experienced successfully going out and facing your fear, and you're on this momentum of continuing to do that, and you can, and that's a very positive and good and correct mindset to face agoraphobia. I wonder, if you would want to, with this group, I'm trying to. You signed up for the first group support meeting, kind of like an AA meeting. I'm trying to start. But the idea for me, with this group chat and the group next to it is, to have many, because eventually we're going to become overflowing. Hopefully, that I'll have to create more than one group chat, and the group itself, I'll probably have to create more than one group meeting. And, I have all the time in the world. I have agoraphobia and I live in my house. So, yes, I can manage and do all that, also with the podcast, sharing other people's stories. But, I want to beat my anxiety. And an idea I wanted to share with you, I know I've probably talked too much, but I have this new mindset or something I'm trying to work on. So the idea is that, and you may have heard it if you skim through my videos, so I'm sorry if you're hearing it for the second time, but the idea is that, when we're anxious or, having a panic attack, our body, there's no threat. Like a normal person would be afraid of a bear coming at them and all their adrenaline and energy would be focused on the bear. But us with anxiety, we are the threat, so we're attacking ourselves and our body just goes whack. So what I'm trying to do, because my ultimate fear in reality is just death. Like, it's hard to breathe, my heart's going, I feel like I'm gonna have a heart attack and die. I'm gonna go over, somewhere really far away, or someone's not gonna be there, and I'm just going to die. Death is my ultimate fear, so I'm trying to, in my mind, envision something to focus on when I get anxious. And I think I have a pretty good imagination, so I try to imagine that I am fighting death. And intrusive thoughts, sort of like a dream, they kind of just happen to you. They're out of your control. You're there, but not really. But if you can become aware in your dream, you can do anything. So, and that sounds weird, but that's what I'm trying to do in my brain. I'm trying to imagine myself with everything I possibly can. My imagination, or everyone's imagination, is infinite. They just have to imagine it. But when I'm starting to feel anxious, I'm trying to imagine myself fight and, win a battle against death. And, I've taught a few agoraphobics the progressive muscle relaxation, and honestly want you to try it the next time you're anxious if you've never tried it before. But I've had people send me videos of them squeezing their fists and going further, and just the idea of like this community that I'm a part of that's like constantly talking to each other and being there for each other. And some of them are pushing further, and that we're all fighting this same fight against something that seems unstoppable, like a big giant monster that we are terrified of, but that we're all fighting together. And the monster's lying to us. We're not dying. We can breathe. We're not about to have a heart attack. So the idea is we start telling ourselves the truth and fighting back. And as well as tell myself the truth, I'm trying to imagine being a hero within my mind and, fighting this dark demon that has a hold of me. I don't know if you have any thoughts on anything I just said. I know I rambled
Yeah.
there for a minute.
No. This is fantastic stuff. Like you're basically saying, telling the story of my present life. As you were telling me about how, you have the fear of dying, no one's around to help save you, right? And the other aspect that you were saying about thinking ultimately about the end, what's going to happen, what's the absolute worst thing that's going to happen. I'm afraid it's going to happen. I'm presently dying, apparently, because of the panic attack I'm going through. Oh shit, I didn't die though. That's what I think happens to me when I get to that point. I don't fear death. Instead, it's the fear of the panic attack. Right? I think that's one of the many things of being agoraphobic, is the fear of the next panic attack, or doing something that is going to create one, or that you fear is going to create one because of XYZ reasons. And what I've learned to do is I start to feel, I call this the 15-minute rule, I guess it could be a rule. The first couple of times I was by myself at home, I started to time myself, and started telling myself, like, okay, how long has it been, that my girlfriend's been out? And I know it's negative, you don't always want to think about those things, because then you're just going to be more anxious, be like, oh no, it's going to take forever for her to come back. Oh no, where she is, she's too far away. She's going to take, And so what I started doing is, instead of thinking negatively and going down the wrong path, I started to feel better after 15 minutes. My first couple of times of being alone since my panic attack, I started to notice after 15 minutes, I'm no longer thinking about the anxiety. I'm no longer thinking about like how long it's going to be until she comes back, or, that, I'm alone or something, and every single time I started to become alone, I started telling myself, it's only 15 minutes, 15 minutes of dread, 15 minutes of worry, and that's it. That's all I'm going to allow my body to do. That's it. And so subconsciously, I would be aware of the time, like, oh, she just left. Well, I'm heading, I'm going to do dishes. I'm going to clean around the house. I'm going to do laundry. I'm going to feed the cat. I'm going to change the cat litter. I'm going to do all this nasty fucking cleanup junk shit, to take my mind off of it. And it worked. And before I knew it, 15 minutes went by and I wasn't even thinking about the time. And then I just hopped into a video game or watched a movie or a TV show and went on with my day, with my life. And then when I had to test myself further, or when I did test myself further out in public, and I'm, doing exposure therapy, and I'm at a grocery store, I'm consciously aware that time is going by, not fast enough, right? But it's still going by. And so I started thinking, like, this is kind of self-therapeutic for me, that I start to feel that time goes by and I'm still alive and I haven't died and nothing's happening. I'm not dying. Nothing is putting me in a hospital bed to the point where, I can't get out of the hospital. You know, I've seen that happen to my father. He clearly had heart disease, heart issues, and thyroid problems, and a whole lot of medical problems. My mom recently also having medical problems, and she was in the hospital, but I'm not. And for the most part, I'm healthy enough to not need to be in the hospital, so I'm safe. And time still goes on, and the days go by, and it's been 2.5 years of this hell for me. But it's been 2 years, and I'm getting better. I'm feeling better. I'm feeling confident. Tomorrow I got to repark my car by myself, but that's fine. I've done it for 2.5 years. Nothing's stopping me. And you see, like, the thought process of time sometimes makes you feel comforted in knowing that nothing is going to happen, because nothing has happened already. For the past, 2 hours, you have not gotten into a panic attack talking with me. I haven't. I haven't felt the jitters. Have you?
No, and I think that's what happened to me originally is, I thought I was dying for 3 years, and since I didn't,
Yeah.
and 3 years went by, I was like, okay, well then, I'm not dying. This is anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's helpful sometimes to feel the passage of time and allow yourself to, like you said, go through these moments. But for me, I start to feel that time is just going. Time never stops. No matter how it feels like it slows down when we're having a panic attack, because it feels like it's hours of dying, when in fact it's like minutes, if anything, or even seconds for some people. It's literally seconds, but it feels like minutes or hours. But time doesn't stop. It will always go on. And what that also means is sometimes you could even think about the future. What am I going to do when this is over? Like, not when my life is over, but when this fear, in my case, for example, of being alone at home while my girlfriend goes to hang out with her friends for the night, what am I going to do when she comes back home? I'm going to feel relieved. I'm going to feel happy. She's home. Yay, I'm not alone anymore, right? So I allow myself to kind of think about the future, look forward to the future, but not be so consumed by those thoughts, but allow myself to feel kind of like the passage of time. 15 minutes have already passed. It's now 3 hours into me being alone, and I'm crushing it. I'm confident. I'm busy with my life. That's it. No longer need to think about it. And then I move on. So when I did have the panic attacks, I was afraid that I was having a stroke, but I wasn't thinking about death. I was thinking more so like, what the hell is this shit? Like, I was thinking about my relatives who have Parkinson's disease. I'm like, is this Parkinson's disease? Well, I'm not shaking. Like, my aunt has it. My uncle has it. Am I having it now? Is this a stroke? What is this? I don't know what this is. And my personality type is ISTP, by the way. So that means I want to know what's wrong so I can fix it and move on, right? And I think that takes me out of the deeper thought processes of fear, because if I figure something out that helps and I keep doing it, I start to feel better. I start to feel the results are good, positive. All right, what's the next thing I got to fix? What's the next thing, But ultimately, we got to have self-compassion, not beat ourselves up, because that ruins our progress. The moment we doubt ourselves, the moment we say, I can't do it, I'm not going to do it, I can't drive, that you hear a lot of people in the Facebook group says, I can't drive. Mm-hmm. You can drive. You've driven before. You just choose not to drive right now, but I can't. Well, no, you can. It's just you choose not to. I choose not to drive. Sometimes when you think of it that way, you know what? It is true. I chose to stay home today. I choose to stay home tomorrow because I don't want to do something tomorrow. But I'm making the active decision to choose not to. Physically, I probably can. If I jump outside the door and jump back in, hey, that's something. I know I can do it. If I close my eyes and take one step foot outside the door and just take one step back, I can do that because it's easy. When you think about the easiest things that you can do, that can help you realize that you can do those things that you're afraid of, but you're choosing not to. And it's understandable. It's totally understandable, totally healthy. This is one word that a lot of people don't like to throw around because is it healthy to really kind of, I guess, I don't know. I don't call it feeding the negative aspect of having these fears. But to be honest, part of self-compassion means you go at the pace that works for you. But if you don't know what your pace is, give yourself the time to figure it out. And I don't think a lot of people think about that or talk about that. They always say, live through the fears, don't run away. Well, it's not really running away if the person is actively trying to figure out what works for them. It just takes a lot more time for some people than others. So be patient for yourself and with yourself, and don't doubt yourself. And sometimes just changing the verbiage around. I choose not to drive. I'm going through these phases of agoraphobia. I'm getting better. And one day when I feel up to it, I'm going to give it a shot, even if it means just walking up to the car. I was talking to someone from the group a few months back. They said they couldn't get outside. I mean, they were homebound, basically. And I think a week later after, we had a discussion of how I did my baby steps. And I gave her suggestions on how she can do her baby steps, based off of what she was telling me. She couldn't leave her house. So I said, well, her biggest goal is to get to the car and go inside so she can feel confident to try to drive it one day. And I said, well, why not get in the habit of at least taking a couple steps outside your door? And that's it. For one day, just take a couple steps out of your door. That's it. Don't walk to your car. Don't walk to the garage. Just get used to going outside your door and feel the space around your door. Feel the space around the hallway if you have a hallway, if you live in an apartment complex. Just get used to that feeling of being outside the door, because that could be a big step. For me, I'm sorry, I'm just rattling on, but
No, you're good.
for me, when I had high levels of anxiety mid last year or so, it got really bad where when I went outside to check the mail or throw out the trash, I did get a big, huge slap in the face of just anxiety and fear. And then during the day, when I look outside and I look at the sky, yeah, that phobia was on crack. It was like, now you're afraid of the sky, can't go outside. And I'm like, whoa, where did this come from? Like, I never had this before. And this is frightening that it got to that point. And so I can relate when it comes to that other feeling of like, I can't leave my house. It's too frightening to go outside, and it's too frightening sometimes to even open the window blinds for me. At that time, when it was really bad, I was too afraid to open the windows and look outside because I knew that it was too hot outside, or I felt like triggered because I could see the clouds, like, oh no, because I live on the third floor of an apartment complex. So sometimes I get that feeling of like, oh, I'm really high up, or I'm really close to the clouds, or I can gauge distance. I don't want to look outside. Close the windows, close the blinds. Let me live in darkness as a vampire. But so yeah, I after that moment of that fear of just like, this makes no sense to me, that I'm just going out to throw out the trash. That's it. I'm coming right back. Why am I afraid? Or I'm going further out this time just to go check the mail that's downstairs. Like, I'm not afraid of that. But it changed. It went away. Yeah, I didn't mean to sidetrack, but I think just the thought process of allowing yourself to feel the passage of time will eventually start to allow you to see the future, which is hopeful, because you can look at the past, especially the recent past, for the past couple days, past couple hours. None of the severe issues with anxiety has happened to you or whatever. If you can find that, then you can also kind of look into the future, and be like, you know what, this time from yesterday to tomorrow is going to be great. When I tried this, if I'm not going to try it, that's fine, but this is great. This is great. And I like this momentum. I'm going in that direction. And be compassionate, be patient with yourself, and try not to force yourself to do the exposures. If you're not feeling up to it, you're going to have better days. Wait for those better days to come up and then try it. Yeah, I was just thinking like the passage of time helps out a lot if you because it puts you in the moment, right? The present moment, nothing's happening to you, you know, and it's just a lot. Like you said, it's a lot of fear that drives us to the worst state of mind that we can be in. But if we can take control of our physical aspect, you know, if we know what makes things worse, this is what I was telling. I think this is what I was saying in that live when you saw it. We know what makes
Feeding the
things worse.
fuel, I think, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. If we find the fuel and we get rid of it so that it doesn't create more flames, then you feel that confidence kick in because you start to figure yourself out. You figure out your own body. You know, you realize, oh crap, this whole time I've been doing this thing to cope negatively about XYZ when in fact it was making me have panic attacks, you know, or whatever. So let me just stop doing that. And then you do it. Then you realize, oh shit, I've actually had better days because I did that. So it feels control. And I think agoraphobics don't feel they have control. And it's much easier to dive into the quicksand of negativity.
You know, another thing you said with the passage of time, like looking back, every panic attack you've ever had, you know, at least for me, I always thought death, and but you've survived every one. You know, you've made it through, and every small
Yeah.
thing you do, you know, walking a couple feet outside your house, you know, if that's your limit, jump a little past it. I think it's okay to have, you know, a few backup plans or escapes, but as long as you're trying to push forward, there is a click though. There really is. Like once you start pushing through and doing it successfully, something happens to you where you're just now confident, and I do miss that feeling, and I sense that you're on that path.
Yeah.
I want to see you climb that mountain again. That's what I want to see.
Well, yeah, yeah. One day,
How
one day.
far are you away from that?
Um, I mean, I've already crushed the first panic attack, right? Environment. You know, that's the second one that I got to do. That one's a little more challenging because it is one of those things where, like,
I had a mountain right
yeah.
next to my park when I was trying to first beat my anxiety, and every
Mhm.
day I would walk up to the mountain. I would get close to it, and when I started to try to climb it, I didn't make it up the first few times. I would make it halfway and turn back down and run home.
Mhm.
But the time that I did make it up, I considered that to be me completely beating my anxiety, because after that point I just felt on top of the world, I guess literally. But halfway up, even the time that I did end up making it, my heart started going and I wanted to run, but I instead sat down and just felt it. I waited and I calmed down, and then I went up, and tears. And I want that for you, man. I don't know how far this mountain is from you, but that seems like a very important place.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. That and flying. You know, flying
Oh my
is a
god.
major.
I always say if I get high and then get on an airplane, that is... So I've been clean for 12 years, actually.
Oh, okay.
So the last time I smoked 12 years ago, I had a panic attack. So yeah, if I were to get high and then get on an airplane, I don't have anxiety anymore. Like
That's what
I'm
I
good.
feel. Yeah, that's what I feel too.
I hope so, man. I hope we can go fly somewhere.
You know,
Especially like over the ocean, because you know I've made friends online, and one of them lives in Scotland and Australia and whatever. Like to fly, but then also over the ocean. God damn, that would be... That's the fear right there.
yeah,
We'll get there.
yeah. And sometimes it just takes us kind of imagining it happening. I think that's one of the exercises that my therapist was telling me to try to do is to imagine doing things you're thinking that you're afraid of doing. And if the moment hits you like it's afraid, like you're afraid of it, you snap out of it and realize, well, I'm not there. You know, I'm here. I'm in my bed. I'm safe. But at least I tried it.
Yeah, there's
And
some...
that's what I've been doing because there might be a moment soon where I might have to get on the plane with my girlfriend and go visit her family on the East Coast, and that is something that I need to be there for her, with her, to help her out in. And so I've been actively picturing
Imagining.
myself,
Mm.
imagining it, picturing myself in there, I keep telling myself, all right, this is what I'm going to do for the first hour, second hour, third hour, fifth hour. And before I know it, I'll feel comfortable. I'm just not going to look out the window.
That's exactly what I do with my car ride that's 5 minutes away. Like during the state of, being anxious while I'm going to my mom's house, and it's only a 5 minute car ride, I have like five different backup plans. Like, and by the time
Nice.
I've gone through every backup plan, I'm at her house. So if you can come up with like 100 backup plans, I think you're good.
Yeah. What's interesting that's been happening too for me when I've been driving lately, I don't know, this is a miracle. I don't know if you're religious, but um, I used to be Christian slash Catholic, but I chose a different spiritual path since then. But um, coincidentally, ever since I started to, well, more so this past few months, um, when I drive my car around the block, I noticed that the radio station is on a Christian rock station. I never picked it; just randomly just shows up, and I just get too lazy to change it. I just blast the music. For me, it's kind of just soothing, just hearing rock and roll or just hearing the radio now. It just makes me feel better, so I don't have to focus on fears and stuff. But lately, a lot of the times, I've listened to the lyrics, and a lot of it was like encouraging, like, and it literally says, "You got this. You're gonna be great and fantastic." Jesus is there to support you along the way. And I'm like, wow, these are words of encouragement, and I'm feeling it. And so sometimes when things that you don't plan for happen, they're very supporting. And I could have looked at it in a negative light and be like, who listens to this kind of music? Change, and then just start being all afraid of driving and being negative. But I didn't. I let that station roll. Whatever it is that they're doing, talk show or Christian music or whatever, and just let it roll and just went with it. Like, okay, you know what? I'm feeling supported here, and like I'm feeling support, and it feels good. And it's kind of like talking to my girlfriend sometimes when she tries to encourage me, or my therapist, but it's the radio doing it, and I didn't plan for it. And it's just one of those rare oddities that happen where things kind of line up for me to keep pushing and just keep living,
You
not
gotta
being afraid.
channel that inner hero.
Yeah, exactly. Totally.
I'm not real. I'm agnostic. I think if I was religious, I probably wouldn't have any anxiety because God's got my back. So what am I worried about? But I do believe that there's something. I think that the world is too perfect, and I know obviously there are problems. But if we were a few degrees off or whatever, the sun would burn us, or we would freeze to death in the ground. That the food that grows from the ground is good for us, and just if you've ever experienced love or bliss or butterflies, or there's lots of good things. Obviously there's horrible things, but I don't think you can have good without bad. That's a giant conversation, but I do believe that there's some sort of understanding among the universe of good and evil and truth, and I don't know what, but I think there's something. Yeah.
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 I don't know
Yeah.
is
No,
the answer to that question for me.
right. Right. No, I hear you. I agree that it's when you do have a
Faith.
kind of support that's there for you, it does allow you to kind of, like you said, become like a hero for yourself, you know, and sometimes that's what works, and sometimes that can really pull you through some of your toughest times in your life. So, but it's not to say for those, people that feel alone or are alone, that there is nothing else out there. There always is. And there are balances in life. And I think that sometimes when we respect the balances that are there, we feel the support naturally through the universe. Like, I don't know if you believe in, there's always a reason why things happen, but I don't know, sometimes if you just give it some thought and allow your life to kind of live out itself, you'll start to feel that there are reasons for things happening to your you know your body, your mind, your spirit. So, like in my case, this whole experience, uh, it taught me that I need to have patience. That I've always been trying to just get by and pass up all the agony, in my life and my family. Like, whenever anybody's in distress, and be like, "What's the problem? What's the problem? Oh, is it that asshole that just divorce him, get him,
Yeah.
get him out of the way and move on." And
Fix it.
then I realized that that's not showing, empathy. And then I start to think about that. Oh my goodness, this whole time I've been focused on trying to help people get by, like by avoiding the problems and trying to solve their problems, when the one thing they needed was me there to listen and to be empathetic to the emotions and the heartache they're going through.
I'm
But as a
aggressively
kid,
nodding my head, by the way.
yeah, you see what I'm saying? As a kid, for me, growing up, I never learned that, because it was just me, my mother, and my father. And my father was always kind of the aggressor when it comes to the disputes. And so whenever he create that negative atmosphere, it triggered me to become angry and protective of my mom. And so when my mom was in distress and in pain and sad, I was not there for her emotionally, empathetically. Instead, I was there as a protector to be like, just divorce him. Let's go to my aunt's. Let's go over there. Let's get away from this negativity. Like, I'm always there trying to solve or trying to make things better physically, but I never learned what it meant to be there emotionally and be like, hey, I understand what you're going through. I'm feeling this pain as well. And, I'm here for you, like that. And so being, agoraphobic, allowed me to have a unique empathy towards the things that a girlfriend is going through emotionally. She goes through something different, completely different from me. And I needed to kind of put myself in her shoes and be respectful that just because I don't experience it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And so I tell her, look, I believe you're going through these things, and I'm here for you, whatever it is you need me to do. And I do appreciate that you're the same, doing the things for me too. So, but going back to what you were saying about, like, the feeling of loneliness and such, that comes with being agoraphobic. And for people that don't have partners in their lives, and are physically alone, I like to look at them as big heroes, because they're doing things alone, getting by without realizing how much it takes for the rest of us who don't live alone to try to do those things. And
For even a
yeah,
little bit, for even hours at a time, yeah. And they're
yeah,
doing
yeah,
it all day, every day.
right, right. I look up to them for that. I think in one of those room calls that I had, the or ex-police officer, he was actually in the middle of doing his exposure therapy, driving out on the road and the highway, and making us all look like chumps. We're like, come on.
Well, that's good though. You need a little
Oh yeah, yeah,
push.
it's good. But you see what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
like, he's doing all that because he does live alone, and meanwhile the rest of us are like, we're at home, but we're just coming up with excuses to not do exposure therapy. But we were impressed. We were like, wow, like. And we asked him, like, why are you out and about this hour? And he's like, oh, I just got to get my exposure in. And coincidentally, that same night, he helped out somebody who I think was having car trouble. So it's
Yeah.
always a reason.
As
Yeah.
messed up as it is to say, we have not cushy lives, but like, I've always told my wife, maybe you should have locked me out of the house and just called the cops and said I wasn't supposed to be here, and I would have had to face my fear right then and there, and it'd be all done with. Um, but I found that, when you're forced into the fear, like if someone's like, let's go, come on, you're just not in the headspace, and then you can go in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
I think the way to do it is to face your fear voluntarily with confidence, and like you said about fixing and being there for people emotionally. I've always wanted to get to the solution as fast as humanly possible, but I've found, especially with my scenario, people giving me the correct answers for years, 6 years, that it was all in my head, that it was anxiety, and the person has to be in the right headspace, and also, like, with therapy, you're not, so obviously we're not therapists, but the idea is that you're not giving them solutions or telling them how to fix it. You have to get them into that headspace, and they have to sort of figure it out for themselves. They have to. You can't help someone who doesn't want it or refuses it or isn't in the right mind space for it.
Right, right. I think it's one of the most difficult situations to be in because on one hand, people are trying to help by encouraging you, but they don't understand what really does help you. And so, in their mind, by encouraging you to go outside is their way of helping you because, they're trying to motivate you. But then you're not having a good day, for example, and it's not your best day to go out, So, but, I think when it comes to especially when you're in a relationship and you're trying to find compromises where you're trying to show your partner, hey, look, I'm actively trying to do something, but I need your help doing this other thing, and in hopes that they understand that that's how you're trying to reach them out in the middle, that you're trying to get your life back on track while also trying to do something nice for them, um, in hopes that they're understanding that you're still struggling, but you're trying. I think that's what matters the most to anybody, is being able to at least see you try to do something while you're fighting it, or but it just comes down to ourselves, and as long as we're patient and understanding that we have gone through so much in our life, especially with this mental disease, I think we can strive and reach those goals, no matter how small they are or how large they get. And we're not alone.
Yeah.
Millions of other people around the world, billions probably, all suffer. Why? Well, because we're all human. That's one thing we all can relate to being. It's human. We make mistakes. We also suffer the same way. So we're not alone.
And we're all alone together. I think there's a fine line between enabling and helping. Especially with me, like maybe my wife wants to go somewhere and I'm like freaking out or getting anxious, and I'm trying to convince her to stay because I don't want to be afraid, and someone might look at that as or she might look at that she's staying home because she's helping me, but in reality, in that scenario, she is enabling me. But I think, when people are freaking out, like with this chat that, people are coming in talking about, I'm feeling anxious, someone talk to me, please. I think it's important to comfort those people when they're feeling it, but also encourage them to start really, finding out what's feeding the fuel, or as you say. And, a lot of people don't get a lot of sleep. They eat unhealthy like me and drink Coke. I need to work on it. But I think they need to be encouraged and, start training in their house. And also with the heat, I think they could, for me, I'm trying to go sit outside for 20 minutes, however long I could take it, because I think being inside so much, I'm just used to the AC because, when I was a kid, I would run around in the 120-degree weather and it didn't faze me at all. But 6 years of not really leaving my house, keeping the air conditioner at 70 degrees 24/7. When I go outside, it's like, yeah. So, I'm trying to stay at home and train for the day that I can live a normal life. And I think, having people like you potentially talk about your story, and, maybe hopefully you'll stick around in the group, and I wouldn't mind seeing a couple of those triumphant videos. You talked about one that you had, posted those, and we need to post more encouraging stuff. It can't all be bad. Like, we have to, yes, comfort each other, but at the same time, you can only do so much comforting before it becomes enabling, and we really need to start trying to push, not in an aggressive way, but more of an inspiring way to, yes, we know you're going through it, but we want to get you in the right headspace to where you're comfortable at least taking those first steps and feeling the momentum of courage and, all pushing back. That's the direction we need to head forward. So.
Yeah, definitely. There's there's a member in that group that we were in, or we are in. Her name is Renee, and she posts videos, and sometimes she does live videos of her doing her exposure therapy. And sometimes it's immensely triggering because she will show you not just the good, but the bad. And then, she'll show you what she goes through when she has the panic attack as it's happening. And it's triggering because you relive the very thing you're afraid of, that has happened to you, but at the same time you can't ignore that feeling of like, holy crap, other people go through this too. Holy crap, like, she's going through the same things that I'm going through every single step of the way. The thing that I was doing, the concern, the worry, the trying to find an escape, like, she's going through that. She went through that, and she's doing this and she's doing that. And then, wow, that's so awesome that she's able to, drive for that long on the highway, and I can't do that, but at the same time, she's afraid of going out on her porch, but I'm not. Well, that's interesting. So in a way, like, these videos of people trying to go through, or are going through their exposure therapies, the good, the bad, and the ugly, is helpful because it's educational, it's encouraging, it's also supportive, because then you see all the comments of people saying, hey, you did it, you achieved it. Sorry that it was a little tough and touch and go there for a bit with the panic attack, but you're crushing it. You survived. You did it. It's not just survival though, but you made it a part of your life to be able to go out there and do that, whatever it is you were doing. Helping your daughter out, taking her to a trip, or taking her to the grocery store or whatever. You achieved it. Like, you can do it. But it is a big thing of, like, reality, because if we avoid doing these things and then we see someone else not avoiding it and they go through their bad parts, it kind of feels like you're reliving your own. But it is encouraging though, seeing that other people are going through it as well, and you don't feel like you're going nuts and crazy. And you witness that, hey, I just saw someone go through a panic attack. They didn't die. They didn't have to call the police. They didn't have to call the ambulance. They didn't have to go to the ER. I see. They did these techniques, and that's how they're able to go through. I'm going to leave a comment and ask them, what was going through their minds during this part, or something, But, yeah, no, I definitely will. Next time I go for a walk or something, I'll record myself. Show you guys, like, what I go through, my mindset. I try walking. I try talking through the thoughts that are going through my mind as I'm doing the exposure, so that other people can know, because I tend to forget if I don't do it.
I also think I've done similar things, and I think it actually helps you talking it out loud, because you're, it's somewhat of a distraction a little bit.
Oh yeah, it is. Like, I think the last one I did is walking up the, I guess it's a block or a cul-de-sac. I don't know what it's called, but it's the next neighborhood over. It's not far at all, but I haven't walked up there in over a year by myself. So, getting used to the whole feeling of being in an open space that I haven't been there in over a year, it was a little frightening at first, but I was, in that video, I was talking about how I was getting better. That's why I had the courage to do it that day. And then I gave myself a moment of just not being distracted to deal with the fear. When I got to the top of this, and ironically, it's a hill. I think what happened is it's like an exercise. So you feel like you're working out and like your heart's racing. But for me, I wasn't afraid of my heart racing anymore, which is fantastic. I know a lot of people, they feel afraid about that, racing heart rate when they get anxious.
I mean, that's because a lot of us, the only time our heart race happens, because we're not exercising, is panic.
Exactly.
So we associate.
Yeah. So that's the good thing with exercising, even if it's just walking on a treadmill or doing a couple laps of just walking, and you allow your heart to race, and you feel that it's normal, so that when you do have another heart racing moment, you associate it with, this is just like working out, like I did yesterday or something. Yeah. At least that's what happened to me, and I think that's why I'm not afraid of it anymore. But I was getting up to that hill, and I got to a point where I just kind of just stopped talking to the camera, and I'm like, all right, I'm having that moment now, getting the jitters now, and just give myself that moment to deal with it and confront it, and then it just went away, literally seconds. But in my mind at that moment, it felt like, oh man, it felt like 15 minutes of this dread. And I looked at the video, I'm like, that was literally like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, wow, like that's just amazing how at that moment it felt like 15 minutes. I remember, I was like, dude, this is taking forever, but it actually was a matter of seconds.
I mean,
And, I was confident. You can see me go through that moment, but I wasn't having a panic attack, but I was going through that jittery moment of like, oh, this is weird. I'm getting that weird feeling. But I remember that instant, I looked at the future. I'm like, it's literally just going downhill physically to downhill, not emotionally, but physically downhill to, the end of the street. And then I'm home. And that's what I did. And it was a good experience. And I'm looking forward to doing it again. Just procrastinating it amongst many things in my life.
right. I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing some of those videos, because you talking about it is just reminding me of what it was like when I started facing my fears and conquering, and those triumphs are just like the feeling you get when you do it. There's almost nothing better than that.
Oh yeah, totally. There's I think there's tricks to do in this too. Like, it doesn't have to always be a big planned thing. Like, I'm gonna grab the phone and I'm gonna, hit record at this point, and I'm gonna say these things and whatever. Like, sometimes you could just, I don't know,
Do it.
yeah, just do it. Yeah,
Just do it. As
just put it in your,
that one meme.
Yeah.
Just do it. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Just play that
Exactly.
while you're walking. You'll be fine.
Yeah. I mean, it would be fantastic if everyone had GoPros and attach it to their heads so that you don't even think about it and just do it, and then just watch the footage afterwards. Be like, wow, I did it.
I think it's important for other people to see your face, though, especially if it's, to help them.
Oh, yeah. No, I meant the reverse GoPros where it just shows you that weird fisheye view of your face.
Right.
So then you can see as you're going through the emotions and the feelings.
Sometimes I find when I'm in the car, that's my most anxious state that I put myself in. If I turn on my camera and I look at myself, I do sort of calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
Something about seeing yourself, like, come on, dude, are you really freaking out right now?
Right, exactly. It's kind of like you kind of snap into the reality of, like, what are you afraid of? There's nothing here.
No, it's just you. And that's true. It's just you.
Yeah.
All right, brother. Well, it was good talking to you, and I hope that you stick around in this group that I invited you to. And it'd be nice to see Triumph videos, and I hope to hear from you in that group. We're just starting it for the first time, and maybe we can do another one of these things if you want.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the group session like none other.
Yeah, I haven't even written it yet. I have to figure it out. I mean, basically, the idea is that, Bob will share his story, and then anyone who has feedback for Bob will give feedback, and then we'll go on the next one. And
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, I've been in a couple of those sessions before. It was kind of like an AA group or something. But, they're very helpful.
Anxiety Anonymous, yeah.
There you go.
All right, man.
All right. Have a good night.
You too.